We are live. Welcome to Pixel Fondue in this fine April early afternoon in California. I'm not sure where you are in the world, but it's a nice day here in California. We've got Foundry, Shane, the product manager for MODO down there. We've got Ed, the MODO evangelist that you're likely to come in contact with. And Andy Brown, longtime MODO user / teacher / evangelist, and now product designer. Correct, Andy?
And
Andy is
bearded like you.
What's that?
Bearded like you and a little bit grey.
Oh yeah. Oh God, I know. It's that second kid. The second kid. My hair got black. I looked like Ed, and then the second kid came out. Bam.
So I should stop at one.
Yeah, you should stop at one.
Just kidding.
You have one? You have
No.
one coming? Ed? Something you want to tell us?
Not yet.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So we have a couple of things on the agenda today. I just want to bring that up front, and then we can sort of get into the details. But I do want to talk about, of course, MODO 12 was just released. So we're going to talk about some of the details of that, and maybe let Andy talk about what he was trying to accomplish there. I think this is maybe his first sort of release that has his fingerprints on it. And then we'll talk a little bit about Kanova, the new sculpting program at early access on Steam. If you haven't gotten that, I assume you will by the end of this broadcast. And then a couple other details. I know MODO Indie has been updated and out, I think, since the last time we talked. Isn't that right, Shane?
Yeah.
Version of MODO Indie. So, and I know there's some things like bot booleans and some things like that are available for MODO Indie. So there's some changes there. Radeon Pro Render, maybe we'll get an update with that. Chat a little bit about, I think there were some interesting things mentioned at the NVIDIA GPU conference a week or two ago. We could talk about some of that stuff and how that may affect the future of MODO. And then we'll take some questions from the people in the chat window over there. I see some familiar faces already. All right. And so that's the agenda. So I don't know. Why don't we just get going? I think we'll just get going with Andy. What do you say? Andy, tell us a little bit about MODO 12 in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. I will say right off the bat, congratulations on the release. I think, you guys, Shane in particular, I think spearheaded this new method of releasing the software in a quicker cadence, I guess is the way to say it, or a quicker repetition. So we get 2, 3, maybe 4 releases a year, and they're smaller than the old day MODO releases, which came like every 18 months, maybe at best. But I really like the way this has been turning out. Personally, they almost happen so fast. I don't even I just installed MODO 12 because I don't like installing new software in the middle of projects. But it's nice to see this constant update from my view. But Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do with MODO 12?
You're right about the change in the way the releases are happening, because that not only affects your experience as a user, but it has a massive effect internally from a development point of view. So it's hard to when it releases as 12, you think it's kind of like a big release, but it really is only just a point release from 11.2. And the 12 release itself was actually quite compressed in terms of time. So everything you see in 12 was probably only about 2 months' work from a development point of view. 12.1 is a little bit more, and then 12.2 is going to be.
Did you say 2 months? 2 months of work?
2 months' work.
Oh, wow. You guys are pounding it out there.
Yeah. There was a lot that stacked up on us at the end of the year there, and we're starting to pace things out more naturally now, and you'll see that. So 12, as Andy is alluding to, 12.1 is near on the horizon, and then 12.2 will be much further out in the year. So we're following into a more natural 4-month cycle with developers. Some developers leapfrogging, so they're not everybody's working release to release to release.
Right, that makes sense. And
so obviously, if there's like a big ticket feature, we're obviously not going to let a developer try and do it in 2 months, because they'll just burn out. So ideally, a big ticket feature is going to go maybe 4 to 8 months.
Sounds good.
They kind of keep leapfrogging like that. So it's from an organizational point of view, it's much more structured, which I think is a good thing, really. because there's a real kind of momentum and kind of, like I say, a really good cadence through the year. There's no kind of like, okay, we'll see you. Off you go. We'll see you in 18 months' time.
So I'm cutting back and forth a little bit between Andy's camera. I think it's having a bit of trouble keeping up. I hear the Wi-Fi is not so good in the UK. Oh, wait, are you back in the UK? Are you? I know you've been traveling.
You're back home. Switch my camera off? We don't have to see.
So a couple of things I noticed with MODO 12 is there is an incremental feature update. So you see some new features in there, like the fall off gradient, which I'll get to in a second, because I love that. And I want to see that kind of feature implemented in other places in the program. But you've also got some UI workflow usability upgrades in there. And I know Andy, as a user, as an actual day-to-day modeler, there's probably some things he wanted to get into 12 and going forward in future versions of MODO, just things that you've bumped into as a modeler over the years. Go ahead.
It's always tricky to change things in the UI. It's always a tricky thing. You're always going to upset people to a certain degree, but sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah,
for the good of the product.
Keyboard shortcuts are hard to come by.
Yeah, we're in trouble with the keyboard shortcut. So there was the way I'm approaching 12. Well, the way I'm approaching everything now really is, what is if I'm new to MODO and I'm downloading a trial and I'm trying to get into this software, what's my first experience going to be of this application? How discoverable is it going to be? How friendly is it going to be? And I always thought MODO was really friendly. But actually, when I looked at it and I talked to people, it's actually, there's parts of it that aren't really that friendly. I mean, you've really got to know your keyboard shortcuts to get to the real meat of MODO.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to try and do is kind of draw that out a little bit and make things a little bit more discoverable for somebody who's just picking it up and wants to play with it initially.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And if you take somebody who's been using MODO for a couple months and then sit them down next to like a modeler like a Tor Frick or an Elliott Sharp or somebody who's really experienced with MODO is completely customized, that they probably think they're using a completely different program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because which is great for the expert user who needs to pound out assets for games or movies or regular clients or whatever, really quick iterations. But yeah, like 3D software is hard in general. And so, yeah, I think if you've been sitting in front of MODO for 10 years or 12 years or whatever, some of that complexity is probably, you just don't notice it. Kind of like the ads.
Yeah, you're used to it, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't notice the ads on my Gmail anymore. I'm blind to them. See it. Like, I see so. Yeah, I probably couldn't tell you.
MODO's great because it does allow you to use it like that. You can customize it as much as you want.
Right.
And, simplify things and all of that. But that's, for a new user who's got 15 days to trial it, that's, a difficult thing to kind of sell to them.
And so, Ed, you probably bump into that a bit because you work with the people who trial MODO a lot. And what is some of the feedback that you have to deal with when you go back to Andy and say, look, I've talked to like 100 people this week and they keep saying the same thing. Like, what are they talking about?
It's interesting. The trial is 30 days, and I don't get a whole lot of comments about the MODO UI. I just most of it is people want to know how to model or how to unwrap UVs, and I just provide them with existing tutorials for that. But I actually don't get a whole lot of I guess feedback or criticism about the UI from the trialists.
Are they people who are coming from something like Maya, or are they just like Photoshop? Or are they completely new to 3D? Some
of them are. It seems to come in waves. For a while, we were getting a lot of people that were coming into it from concept design and concept art. But it runs the whole spectrum. We're getting a lot of people coming from 3ds Max and Maya, existing 3D apps, and as well as people who are just like new to digital completely, like people that have like a fine arts background. It really runs the whole spectrum.
Right. And so one of the things that's
each of those people are going to have a completely different reaction, initial experience.
Right. And it's hard to accommodate everybody. One of the things that's relatively new to MODO, of course, is the mesh operations. And I think that maybe came around in MODO 10. Am I right? Ish. Yep. Maybe last like 18 months, year or so.
Yep.
And so I think there's still some workflow refinement that can be done in that area? Is that something you're maybe going to focus on in the upcoming versions of MODO?
I mean, the UI changes that I've made in 12 is really just the beginning. Okay, not to terrify you too much, but we're going to be rolling out more and more stuff just going through the. I mean, for 12, the thing I really wanted to concentrate on was MODO modes. That's a very important part of the UI,
right?
And I wanted to make that consistent throughout the whole app.
So MODO modes, what we're talking about, MODO modes, I think that's the name of the form at the top of the app, right? So you just want, no matter what tab you're on, MODO has a tab type workflow, right? It actually, which I like, it sort of breaks down the complexity of a 3D app into different tabs. Or something like Maya, you have different layouts, similar concept. But you want a consistent set of tools across the top, essentially, in every tab, no matter where.
I don't want that. One of the things I really hated was this: when you go to different layouts, there's a massive jarring experience going to different layouts.
Yes.
So what I want to try and do is smooth that whole process out, and ultimately maybe reduce the number of layouts that we have.
I actually do that. There's a feature you can use at the top. If you use a little star feature at the top of the layout tabs, you can hide certain layouts. I always hide a number of the layouts out there that I just don't use, like the layout or the game tab and things like that, the scripting layout. I don't use it, so I have them hidden.
Scripting, I never go there.
Also, if you have kits like V-Ray or Octane or both, you have additional layouts up there. So it does get a little bit busy up there. So it's nice to be able to hide them. And like I said, like countless times I'm in the animation layout and I just want to change my lasso type, and I can't get to the tool up the top, or the keyboard, the control space keyboard shortcut's different. So that sort of consistency, I think, is important. So it sounds like that's going to be gradually rolled out. We're not going to get a MODO 11.1 with 1,000 UI changes, but you're going to sort of gradually roll these out. Okay, great.
We're going to be looking at different parts of the app as we're going along and gradually make these changes. But I mean, we're not making any fundamental changes to how MODO works at all. Like, for example, we removed the item mode button, which caused a little bit of consternation. But in the alternative layouts, we don't have an item mode button. I think Zen doesn't have an item mode button. And the reason for changing that is that in MODO, the difference between component mode and item mode is fundamental when you're working. You've really got to understand the difference when you're working. Previously, the UI, MODO's UI, didn't make any kind of didn't give you any kind of clue that there was a difference between those two modes. There was always a yellow light on at the top. And when I've been training people, you can see them doing it. They just go into item mode, and it means nothing to them. It's just the light's still on.
Yeah,
and they carry on working and doing things they shouldn't.
Right.
So by just getting rid of the item mode button, there's now a very strong visual difference between the two modes.
Yeah, there's people in the chat saying, "Bring back the item mode button," and other people saying, "Good riddance." Good riddance to the item mode button.
That's the thing. You can put the item mode button back if you want.
You can put it back. I always press 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. That's a quick way of doing it.
Shift space bar, or you can just click on the component mode button, and it'll go off, and you'll be back in item mode.
Turn off component mode, back in item mode. How many of us, like even after using MODO since version 1, even just yesterday, I was modeling, and one of the most common things you do is you think you're in item mode, but you're in component mode, and you just move all the polygons like 10 feet to the left. And then you go back into animate, and you're like, why is my pivot like separated from my mesh? You're like, oh God, I moved all those polygons over in component mode. So I do. So things like that. I always thought like the setup outline and some of those other UI indicators were really good to have, so when you're in setup mode, for instance. So anyway, so we've got some UI changes implemented in MODO 12. If you haven't downloaded it yet.
Features.
And let's talk about a little bit about features.
So obviously, because the time was compressed quite a bit, we had to be very selective in what we were doing. So we made a lot of changes to mesh paint, a lot of fixes to mesh paint. So that tool has been in MODO for a long, long time, and it's a really powerful tool. But it was the regular mesh paint tool was fine, but then the instance version of it and the replica version of it were basically broken. when you were using presets. So we kind of fixed that workflow. So now it's and for something like Mesh Paint, you're going to want to use replicas or instances for duplicating your geometry. So it makes it much more scalable, as a tool. And plus, I think one of the best parts of that was implementing random presets. So you can now select multiple presets in the preset browser and then paint those over a surface, and that works with any duplication tool as well. So just being able to kind of like populate a scene very, very quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, there's a quick demo of the new Mesh Paint tool in the MODO 12 video. You can find it on Pixel Fondue or probably Foundry. That Steve White did, and somebody, I don't know who made this one, but somebody made an entire shanty town with one click, essentially, where they had a bunch of presets that were just shanty town buildings. And
that was me.
That was you. That was Andy.
That was me.
You're doing your job, all right. I just want to drop my first-person shooter. I just want to send that to Unreal. We'll start shooting at each other. Yeah, that was really cool. So I'm glad you brought up Mesh Paint. That's something I wanted to bring up because I thought that was a good example of a product designer, you having experience as a modeler, coming in and saying, okay, here's a tool that has a huge amount of potential. It hasn't been touched for a while. Let's go in there and revamp it. So do you have other tools that you have in mind for this sort of revamping?
Well, one other quick, before we get too far away from Mesh Paint, one critical thing that Andy did on that project that was really important is he not only looked at just the workflow side of it, but he dug into the database and all the issues. He did a query, Mesh Paint, looking at all the issues, all the suggestions, all the feedback, and we collated all of that. We put that into our target process tracking. And the goal was to, go in there and thoroughly clean it up. So I don't know what you ended up knocking out, but it was 30 or 40 bugs, potentially around that one area alone, addressed by that focus and that work. And that's another, insight to how we are developing differently and trying to, pay more attention to the feedback we've gotten over the years and incorporate that into the new releases going forward.
Yeah, I mean, as the product designer, I hate things being broken. So I'm just as a modeler.
Well, that's a good attribute.
This is MODO is my kind of it's my thing now. So it's always been my thing. But if I find something that's broken, I really hate that. Not so much broken. It could be better. Do you know what I mean?
The improvement, like what you mentioned, the improvements to Mesh Paint, being able to use any number of presets as Mesh Paint, that feature carried over to some of the other tools, like some of the duplication.
It had ramifications across lots of other things as well.
Right, and so just the way MODO is built, that's the type of thing that happens because you have this sort of Lego aspect to some of the tools where improvements to one tool will improve other tools as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other areas of the app that we're looking at. So, but I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, come on! So, what other tool is catching your eye? What do we have to look forward to?
Well, the obvious one is the edge bevel tool. There's been a lot of discussion about that.
The bevel tool.
That's something I think we're going to have to look at on a bigger scale. There's the poly reduction tool. I think that needs a lot of love.
Poly reduction, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, as I find them, I'll address them if I think it's important enough.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think I'm just gonna share my screen really quick here. I've got MODO 12 up with the fall off gradient tool, and hopefully you can tell me if my screen is being shared. I assume it is.
Yep.
So this is, in my opinion, one of the things I really liked about MODO 12. So we have just a procedural bevel tool and with a radial fall off. But what's awesome is this little gradient down here now. We can change the shape of the fall off, right? And so I love this tool, this little gradient here, and I want it in all kinds of places in MODO, right? I want to be able to change the edge bevel profile with a gradient. I want to be able to change the bridge profile with a gradient. I want to be able to change the extrude profile with a gradient. There's so many things I want to do with a gradient. Is this the type of thing you're looking to maybe implement throughout the program as well?
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
Well, all I can say is there are some very nice mini gradient editor improvements coming.
All right, mini gradient editor improvements.
I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, stop there. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're all thrilled to see that. I think so.
Yeah, but the fall off, being able to modulate the fall off with the gradient editor, I've wanted that for years.
Oh yeah. Well, what's funny is, go ahead, Andy.
And have you seen the Cheap City assembly? That's on the on Facebook.
Oh, Cheap City.
I think it's on Gumroad.
Let me bring that up real quick.
He's using that exact feature there to create those buildings. Pretty cool.
Okay, so let me again share my screen. Maybe can I share my screen?
You put a feature in.
I think I'm losing Andy again. So what he's talking about is Cheap City, and it's on Gumroad. We'll put this up in the description maybe. But yeah, it's just it's a procedural city generator. It looks like using the fall off generator. The gradient controls the fall off. Actually, he's got it right there. So we'll check out that. There's been a whole bunch of activity in the third-party MODO community. Lots of kits. We'll get through a number of those. A book by William Vaughan. We'll definitely get to those. But let me get back to some of the new features here. Let me see if Andy is. Andy, you back? Did we lose Andy? I don't know.
We might have lost him.
He's in deep thought. Stuff.
we have lost. All right, Andy Brown. Well, I'm sorry to say, MODO 12.1 will not be coming out soon. Oh, stuck there. Okay, well that's fine.
Virtually, it's almost done.
Get back.
One thing, really quickly, getting back to mesh paint. I mean, and now part of the bug fixes, it now works with symmetry and snapping, which is huge. Because if you've ever tried to use mesh paint with those two features, it didn't work prior to 12.
Right. Yeah. Symmetry, snapping, replicas, random mesh presets. I think the new preset browser updates are pretty cool too. That's the type of thing that you don't really necessarily notice the new release, but just dragging and dropping mesh presets into the preset browser and then being able to use those probably immediately with the mesh paint tool. It's a pretty big deal, right?
Oh, totally.
And especially with this sort of kit bashing workflow. And if you get a bunch of presets or buy a bunch of mesh objects off of Gumroad from somebody and there are a bunch of OBJ files, you know, it used to be kind of a pain to turn those into MODO mesh presets and get them to them from the preset browser. Now you could just load it up the file and drag and drop them into the browser, correct?
Yeah, totally. It's as easy as drag and drop now. You can do that with meshes, materials, profiles. Yeah, anything that'll go into the preset browser, I think.
Does that work with assemblies too?
I don't know about that. Shane, do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't check into that because that's actually a really powerful part of MODO, but a lot of people sort of, I think, shy away from exporting assemblies. Okay, so anything else on MODO 12 we want to like hit in terms of features? Well, can I ask you? Actually, I have one. Shane, this may be more towards you, but there's I don't even know how to pronounce this. It's the GITF export. Is there? Do you guys just say GITF or something?
GLTF.
Oh, it's GLTF. Yeah. GLTF. Okay.
I don't know if it's actually an acronym for something or not. It probably is.
It looks suspiciously close to GILF, which is
oh no.
Man, it looks like GILF.
It's a graphics library transfer protocol.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for saving that. So that essentially, I know Facebook has been supporting that, but that's not a Facebook proprietary thing. That's open, correct?
Yeah, it's developed in partial by Kronos Group, but it's a very open format, new and up and coming. It's relatively new. I think it's been out there for a few years, but it's really gained a lot of traction within the last year or so, and it's getting adopted into a lot of different platforms. I think Unreal just picked it up in their last version. I don't know, 14 or not 14, but 4 point something. I can't remember what the last release they did. But I think they support import of GLTF there, and a number of things are picking it up. So it's the new up and coming star replacement for OBJ, FPX, those types of exchange formats.
Oh, so it really is just a general purpose exchange format and not a WebGL sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, really first and foremost, it's just an open, exchange format. But then there's all these viewers that are WebGL based, that have been created to read that data format very efficiently.
So I haven't done this yet. So walk us through maybe the process of getting a GLTF file out there. Is it fairly simple in MODO?
I'll let Ed can talk you through that. But yeah, that's intent. You export one, you drag and drop it onto your Facebook timeline, and if you keep it within the constraints, it just works. But they do have some pretty restrictive, memory limits and things like that. So if you're a non-game artist, it's definitely a hurdle to go through, because it's creating low resolution game art is an art in itself, and working with the technical restrictions that are involved there.
Yeah, so specifically for Facebook, there is a 3 megabyte file size limit. It's just something they've implemented to keep, I guess, everyone's GLB files pretty low. So even though the format is called GLTF, what you export from MODO for 3D posts on Facebook is you would export a GLB file, and you could use basically any mesh, and for Facebook, as long as it's under 3 megabytes, it'll export just fine. But if you want to actually use like your materials and colors, you would need to have a GLTF material, which you can just add in our shader tree.
So the restrictions, like the 3 megabyte restriction, is a Facebook restriction, not a GLTF restriction, correct?
Yeah. No, it's a Facebook.
There's other viewers out there with there's no limits. I mean, you can really, chuck out at a pretty hefty file to view on your desktop.
And actually, I see Milosh Bulat in the chat right now, and he's responsible for that. So if you have any technical questions, he's there. So everyone say hi, Milosh.
Milosh, all right. Chat. All right, well, here's a question. Is it being supported by Autodesk? So if I also own Maya and I don't want to screw around with FBXs, I change it every 7 minutes. Can I export GLTF?
I don't know. I don't work there anymore. They don't unfortunately tell me the roadmaps anymore.
They don't tell anybody the roadmaps.
I haven't, but no, I haven't noticed anything there. I can't say with certainty, but like others somewhere. I don't know if it was Maxon or ZBrush or Houdini, but I have seen a few others starting to support it too.
Well, Unreal Engine is a big one, right? Did you already mention that, Shane?
Yeah, that one. Blender, definitely. There's a plugin for Blender for it. Yeah, there's stuff out there. I know there's a plugin for Maya, but I don't think it's Autodesk supported.
Right, but Facebook has thrown their weight behind it. It looks like, so maybe this will be something. There's been so many failed 3D formats that they try to make something for the web. And maybe this will be it. I think with the advent of VR and 3D, and Microsoft is really pushing at 3D. I mean, there's going to be something, and maybe this will be it. And we'll see. What is the third-party one that you could embed? I can't remember the name of it. MODO has an exporter for it.
Well, Sketchfab actually, and
Sketchfab. Yeah, if you haven't been to Sketchfab lately, go to their website. It's like kind of blew me away. That's pretty awesome.
Well, they've also adopted GLTF as well, so you can export, I think, GLTF from Sketchfab, or import GLTF into Sketchfab.
Nice. So Andy, I see you're back.
I am.
We are. So we talked a little bit about UI changes. Is there anything else you want broad strokes that you want to talk about MODO 12 series, like things that you're kind of focusing on?
Okay, well, one that was a bit of I wasn't expecting was AVP, to the advanced viewpout.
Alien versus Predator.
Yeah,
that as well.
Good movie.
So
no, not really.
I know.
So in 12, well, basically because of MODO VR, there's been a lot of work done on the advanced viewport.
Right.
Kind of aside from the main part of the MODO. Now that's come into 12 now. A lot of that code is now in 12. So AVP has really improved a hell of a lot. I've seen some things online where people are doing comparison tests for various things, and they're finding that AVP is a lot more robust from a shading point of view.
Well,
there's more coming as well. In 12.1, there's more coming as well. So it's getting to a point now where we can it can handle very complex texturing now in the shader tree.
Right.
And I'm really excited about that.
So some of the layer masking and group masking, things like that, are now compatible with the advanced viewport, which is great. In fact, the advanced viewport, if you turn on reflections, and I mean, it looks like preview now. If you kind of turn on all the buttons, it's getting close. I actually use it for test renders when I send a client. I always have the wireframes on, otherwise you get are those wireframes going to be there in the final? Like, no, you idiot, they're not going to be there. Just
we've still got work to do to make it usable as a kind of like a modeling viewport, a working viewport. But I think just as a way of just looking at your models a different way. And testing some shading. It's and for VR as well. It was a kind of a bonus feature for me.
So better ambient occlusion, maybe?
Better ambient occlusion, better anti-aliasing.
Better anti-aliasing? I mean, anti-aliasing is pretty decent. Okay, sounds good. I think they're, let me just take a peek over here.
Yeah, Thomas Chang in the chat recently did like a pretty good comparison of MODO's native renderer versus AVP. He posted it on the MODO group on Facebook. And Thomas also asks if depth of field and motion blur will be coming, but I don't know if we're...
rounded edges. Mark Tomlinson just pointed out rounded edges in the viewport. For people who do a lot of CAD rendering, that would be very cool. In fact, that'd be very cool for anybody dealing with CAD files. So some of the New Balance people or some of the actual product clients you guys have, I'm sure that those advanced viewport improvements are going to really help their workflows as well. Okay, advanced viewport. So some of the other broad strokes. Do you guys want to talk about any more MODO stuff you want to get into? You want to talk about Kanova?
We could shift gears into Kanova for a little bit.
Yeah. Andy, anything else you wanted to get out?
I'm fine.
Okay, so I'll keep an eye on the chat, and I know Ed is as well. But let's talk a little bit about Kanova. So Kanova is a pre-release or early access sculpting application available on Steam right now. There's also a facial moisturizer you can get on Amazon. What is the other? Alara? Is that your other one? Alara?
Athena, I think.
Athera.
Athera. All right. I don't know.
It used to be Alara, and now it's Athera.
Athera and Kanova. Okay. There's some new product naming.
Coming up with new product names is very difficult these days. Without getting legal letters in the mail sometimes. So.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just put it that way.
All right. So okay. So maybe you've tried something else. But anyway, Kanova, early access. Using a new type of technology called adaptive depth fields.
Adaptive distance fields.
Adaptive distance fields. Now, not that matters so much, because I think a lot of people are just going to download it. They don't care what the tech is behind it. They're just interested, can I sculpt something cool? So there's a couple of aspects. I've got the demo here. I've played around with it a little bit. I do not have a VR headset, but it works on desktop and VR. So
yeah, that's very key, because we don't want people just to shy away from it thinking that it only works in VR mode. We are really trying to develop it to be a very unique VR sculpting application, but there is also the desktop component of it, and you can actually do a lot more detail work on the desktop side than you can in VR on the VR mode side of things.
A little bit easier to do detail work on the desktop side. So, but sculpting in VR is a completely different experience, right? Ed, you've done a little bit of that.
Oh yeah, and just before I move on, a lot of the sculpts that you see that were by Łukasz Pazera, I believe everything that he's shown so far has all been VR stuff that he's done for Kanova VR. But yeah, it's interesting because the tools are the same from desktop to VR mode. It's the same tools, but the way they feel is completely different. I mean, obviously, when you have like one of your controllers, your Vive controllers or your touch controllers, if you're on Rift, when you have it in your hand, it just seems like obvious that when you start pulling the trigger and you have your hand at arm's length and then you pull it towards your face, like it's going to make basically a stream or a tube of digital clay. But when you actually feel it and you actually like kind of adjust the pressure as you pull it towards you and then move it, the feeling is crazy to be able to sculpt with your entire arm. It's really insane.
It's a really different experience, right?
Totally.
And so do you navigate with one controller and sculpt with the other?
Well, I have the Vive, so I have my lighthouses on each side of my room. So I just walk around my sculpture, and you can pull like the side finger that you use your middle finger for, not the index finger trigger, the other trigger, and that's how you can like kind of pick up and kind of rotate your model around and kind of rotate it. So you can actually you can hold it in one hand. You can hold it with one hand or one controller, and then just like sculpt with your right hand, and then you can also like zoom in, so you can actually get like you can get right up into your like on the surface of your sculpt. And it's just a totally different way of working. And then if you want, you can take the head-mounted display off and just work on desktop to kind of refine, to use the same tools, but it just has a whole different feeling. It's
right. So
crazy.
Moving into the future, as you see more and more VR content, you can see somebody, blocking something out in VR, maybe going to the desktop to paint the wrinkles on the monster's face, but then going back into VR to see how this would actually be experienced in the product once you release the VR product.
Totally. I mean, like VR usually gets a lot of people think it's for review. It's like that's what it's best for. But honestly, like for doing those initial broad strokes with a sculpture, I think I'm going to be starting all my sculpts in VR mode and then just bringing it to the desktop and then maybe going back for review. But it's going to be much more kind of like
your sense of proportion and scale in that environment is so accurate and just so different than any other. Either way to achieve that on the desktop is near impossible. So yeah. It's a great way to start that form, and especially when you're dealing with any life size elements or things like that, you can really get comfortable with that object.
I recommend to anybody who tries it, just try to make a life-size stick figure. It's just the most, for some reason, doing that, like actually giving it the torso and then giving it the arms, like make it the same size as you. It's a crazy experience.
So I'm going to bring up Kanova on my desktop here while we talk about it. I'm just going to kind of doodle around if that's okay. So one of the cool things, or one of the things that really struck me right off the bat is you can just kind of paint.
Right. Geometry. So that's the ADF. So you're working in a volume of information. You don't see that information, but you can apply and create information anywhere in that volume. And then you could continuously add more details, within, those elements. So it's a bit different than like adaptive tessellation or anything like that, where the developers don't like me saying this, but you really do have infinite, as an artist, you can really go continuously keep adding detail down into an area. The limitations come in really on the hardware side with memory constraints and things like that. It's not so much the technology itself, it's more the hardware limitations that we eventually run into, in a lot of cases anyway. So ADF was used in Mischief. So, the big plug for Mischief was that you could, you could draw a pixel on the moon standing from Earth. You can just keep zooming in, and add that detail into there.
So is it GPU or CPU, or when you use this, what sort of machine do you want to get? Where do you want to focus your power?
I'd correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is largely gated on CPU. I mean, it just tears up the threads. So the more threads, the better. There's a large RAM requirement with this. The graphics side of it isn't, I don't think so much right now, but other than the VR component of that.
So you mentioned threads. I just glancing at the, as I paint here, this is like, this is probably the best thing I've ever done, actually. So, that's kind of cool. You could do the material cuts in, so you could change materials. So we're talking about threads, I just glancing at the MODO forums. Is there something you have to set in Steam to make sure it uses all the threads, or does it just automatically use all the threads?
There is something. It automatically uses a set amount of threads, but if you have like 12 virtual cores, you could, or 6 cores, 12 virtual threads, you can change it in tunables. I think Greg Brown actually. In the discussion section of the Kanova, the community hub, he kind of walks you through how to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely worth exploring because you'll get slightly better performance out of it.
Yeah. What if you have 16 threads like me?
Oh yeah, 30, and you have 32, right? You're on the Ryzen?
Yeah. So just joking. I am though.
It should work. It should work.
Yeah.
So one of the things I noticed is you also have layers. So it looks like, even though this is early access, you have some pretty cool features already built in here where I can add things on layers and hide, maybe hide. Oh, there's like a ghost mode as well. It looks like. Okay.
Yeah, if you select off that layer, it will actually hide it, but you can't have it. You'd have to go to like layer 2 there. Now it's hidden.
Oh, I see. Very cool. Okay. So it looks like there's some decent functionality built in by looking at the forums again. Greg Brown talking a bit about this. Greg Brown being a MODO, what do you guys call those guys? Expert users?
I guess it's Greg, creative specialist. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. Talks about working on speed and precision and some things like that. And I think what people have to keep in mind is I definitely download this and mess around with it and get the feedback to Foundry. That's why it's on early access, right? I mean, just
it's got a lot there, but we don't feel comfortable in this being something represented as a V1 release of a product. And to be honest with you, we're not quite sure what direction to take this. Is this something that is more a tilt brush type of an audience, more at a consumer level? But even tilt brush is starting to creep into more of the professional space and usage there. So, we're really kind of exploring this from a technology standpoint and also a business model standpoint through this early access period.
Right. Okay. So yeah, get your feedback, download it. So the ADF technology was first demoed. I think I need to bring this up because a lot of people have been looking for this for
a while,
for years. And so now we see something and it's, a separate program. It has a VR component to it. It's on Steam only. It's early access. Can you, explain a little bit I think you did it already, but maybe just kind of give a little bit of information to the people watching what that sort of plan is here, right? This is a way to implement, get this out there without making it easier to update maybe than integrating it into MODO right away. If that's even ever the plan, it's something you guys can like put in front of people quickly, correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a layer of that. We need to put something out there. We need to put something out there isolated from MODO. In the background, we are, cognizant. That's an obvious place for this. But again, we don't know if this is a tool, just, is this a $20 tool for casual consumers to play around with their, their Vive or their VR kit, whatever it may be. Or is this something that is more applicable to professional users that would service as a feature or a plugin or something like that in MODO? Technology-wise, there's not a lot limiting it from that. So that's the good news. We can plug this into MODO. There's, obviously it's a totally different UI ecosystem and a lot of other things around that. But doing it in isolated, way, it just really allows us to get it out there, measure the interest, and really try to study and understand how people want to use this.
So is there a way to up-res the ADF geometry here, or is it just does it dynamically automatically?
Well, so the triangulation happens automatically, but if you can create a new layer and you can just start it off with a lot of extra kind of resolution. So if you go to the layers panel, there is, see how it says new layer resolution? It's currently at 13. That's the default.
Oh, I see.
You can bring that up to maybe like 16 if you were going to maybe sculpt the character's ears, like on the side of their head. The ears might need more resolution right off the bat. So.
Oh yeah, I get it. Okay, so there it is, like that. So.
And then also, Greg, I saw you using the move tool, and first of all, I have to mention that the move tool is definitely high on the priority list for getting some like TLC. But you were using the move tool with follow surface on, and if you disable that modifier, the follow surface modifier.
Let me go back.
It's in the tool. Yeah, there you go. There it is. You might get a little bit more responsiveness if you kind of pull out some clay there.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
You need like a larger. You might need a larger radius.
Larger radius.
But we're aware that it needs a little bit of care.
Right.
If you look at your tool settings, your radius, you have a little checkbox there to the left. And if you actually enable that, it will actually give you pressure sensitivity. So you won't be creating like just a tube of like a similar size.
Oh, okay. So we've got pressure sensitivity, and obviously that isn't something that translates to VR, correct? Or is there a way to do that in VR?
Oh, it does a little bit, just depending on how you squeeze the trigger, like depending on the pressure you apply on the trigger.
Oh, really? You can actually get the Vive handles. That just
I believe so. Yeah, I can.
Oh, well, that's really cool. I'm going to pop back to the chat window here. So So anyway, there's quite a bit of stuff in there in terms of tools and definitely usable. You can jump in. It's cool to see that we can change the resolution. I assume there's going to be maybe some tutorials. Maybe Pixel Fondue will get some stuff up there. And we'll start seeing some things. Now, can you export this geometry as well?
Yeah, OBJ, right, Ed? OBJ?
There's two types of OBJ. Yeah, one with vertex colors and one with like baked colors or something. One is like a super easy. I think it's baked colors. It goes right into MODO. All the work that I've been doing I've taken it into MODO, rendered it, and I've been pretty happy with it.
What about the GILF format?
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
What's happening? Okay, cool. So like Kanova, I think one thing to keep in mind is, even though you've had the technology of it, for ADF for a number of years, you haven't been working on this for like 5 years, right? This isn't, or have you? Or
no, we scrapped together that prototype really, really quickly quite a while ago when Brad initially showcased it. It's probably been 3 years now, 3.5 years or so. And then, a lot of work, most of the development effort went into Mischief for a while. I actually don't know the particulars of what kind of fell out or, the net effect of Mischief was. But then we picked it back up on I would say it's been almost a year now, maybe a little less than that within the research team, trying to do something, again, just something innovative in this space as VR really started to pick up more. We found, this was just a better home for it on the 3D side rather than the 2D side, and just started pressing forward with it.
So is this something that the developers over at Foundry are interested in? Are they, like, this tech is available, I assume, to any app that Foundry owns. So is this something like just developers, I think, are cool and want to kind of dip their toe in and see if they can make something with it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this particular project started in this way, but we have this concept that's called 4% time. So every developer in the company gets to take 4% of their time to just go and do something that they want to do and play around with it. We get ideas, internally that way, new innovative ideas. We pitch things to various different investment funds, whether it be academic or other areas. For new research things, there's been some stuff done there in the film space, around the UK investment funds that are available. And then John Waddellton runs our internal kind of research team, where there's Vilya Harvey, which did the work on this, Duncan and Rob Fanner and a whole bunch of other people, John Effield, that they're constantly looking at new things way out on the horizon from a user's perspective, and how can we mix and match all the different core pieces of technology that we have to create new things into the future. So
right,
lots of different stuff. I mean, Project Bunsen's been talked about, one of those types of things. Gosh, there's quite a few. Kara VR was one of those things as well at a period of time. So some make it all the way through as a full commercial product. And we're kind of in that mode of, is this something that's going to make it or not with Kanova? And it really just depends on, the level of interest that we get from the community out there.
So yeah, so there you heard it. I would express interest. If you're interested in seeing this type of technology in MODO, I would send the link around, share it around, get people with Steam to download it, take a look at it. This will be, I assume there'll be at least some more versions coming out with some improvements. And
yeah, I think we're actually looking to release something maybe in the next week or two. So Vill's been just cranking away at this and is constantly updating new builds out there.
Great. So we got new stuff coming out. I know a lot of people want to see this in MODO, and you don't have to give us future plans, just speculating. I'm just going to speculate and think that they're probably going to want to fine tune the technology in this form, keep it isolated for a little bit until it's, running the way people want it to run. And then they'll take a look at probably the best way to integrate it if they do. So that's speculation. Shane, is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, it's not off the table. I'll definitely say that. And it is kind of architected in a way where that is possible. So again, we just need this to be in its own little sandbox to kind of prove some things out first.
So I did see over in the chat Ed, you just answered somebody that you can actually import a reference mesh and sculpt on top of it around it. You can do that?
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So you can actually, so for instance, does that mesh sit as sort of a background layer? And then you can, if you wanted to, say, import a soldier and draw some straps on his outfit, and then you can export those as a separate mesh?
Yeah, it's actually something I haven't tried, but I've seen Dino Zanko. He was bringing in all sorts of meshes during the alpha, and he was just sculpting on top of it, almost as if it was your sculpting layer was being constrained to the reference layer. So, and the reference layer was a 3D model. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feature.
I'm just looking at it here live. Yeah, you can add an OBJ, so you can upload an OBJ and play with it that way. So very cool. So, all right. So Kanova, so I'll keep an eye on any other questions in Kanova. You can also import like reference images, correct?
I believe you can. Not 100% sure. I think Vil added that. Yeah.
Right. So you got some updates coming.
And the nice thing about it being on Steam for now is that the updates all happen automatically, so you don't even have to worry about like ever having an older version. It's one of the things I really like.
It'll in the back. Well, as you launch Steam, it'll update itself.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So there you go. And I actually just changed my Steam password this morning so I could get this on a different machine. Who can remember their freaking passwords from like 400 different things?
Yeah.
So okay, well, that's Kanova, and we've talked about MODO. And we're creeping up on close to an hour here. So let's move on real quickly. I know there's been some people interested in Radeon Pro Render. That's something Shani had brought up, I think the last time we did one of these. And I know there's been some development work on that, but it hasn't quite made it out into the wild yet. Do you have like a status update on Radeon Pro Render?
Yeah, it hasn't stopped, and it hasn't not gone out from a lack of trying. This is one area where, admittedly, I've been too transparent, and it's come back to bite me a little bit. We were, honestly dead set on releasing this in October of last year, and then November. But there's just been a lot of accumulated challenges as we've dug into this further and further. And it's not, it's just a stacking of consequences. It's nobody's fault or nobody to blame. AMD is very committed to the project, as are we. And every week it feels like next week is the week that we're going to actually get this out there. So we are very, very close. But I want to put something out there that, QA and our internal alpha team are comfortable in us releasing, because at this point in time, there's a few too many rough edges. So I don't want to put damaged goods out there knowingly right at the beginning of this. But we're close. We're very.
And so just for the bigger picture, in terms of releasing ProRender, you're not just creating a ProRender plugin, you're creating a third-party rendering API. That's correct.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest kind of complexity of all of this is we are, really doing we're changing the engine on the Ferrari as it's going around the track, because we're going through and redoing the entire interface that other plugins use to plug into MODO without, disrupting how they plug into MODO. So there's a lot of fixing and augmenting and enhancing how other things connect to MODO, so that hopefully this whole process for, Octane or Redshift, whoever it may be, can be a lot more, simplified and easy to do. And then also further enhance things like procedural, materials and things like that, so that, V-Ray and others can render those types of things.
So it's a bigger project than just getting ProRender and a GPU render out to MODO users. And I use V-Ray and Octane on a regular basis, and it's exciting to me to see that there's some further integrations, deeper integrations into MODO that can be coming. I'm guessing that once you guys wrap up that aspect of it, it'll be a while before the plugin coders can get new versions out. And of course, there's always a new version of Octane. There's always a new version of V-Ray. So it's a moving target for everybody, but this is a project worth undertaking, I think, especially looking at the advances in rendering. So if you've paid any attention to GPU rendering lately, in particular, NVIDIA just had I can't remember what the name of their conference is, But V-Ray showed, Chaos showed a bit of V-Ray next. I know Octane was showing off Octane 4. You had some cool, basically a ray tracing DirectX API from Microsoft, or I think it must be Microsoft. No, if it's DirectX, but whatever it is, you're basically NVIDIA, whatever the collaboration is.
It's probably optics from. I was actually on vacation, believe it or not, for once through that week, and I haven't caught back up. We had Alan was there, and Matthew Mesereau was there, but it was basically a collection of all the rendering gods from around the world at GTC. I don't know, and the GPU Technology Conference or something like that. That NVIDIA puts on, not GDC, but yeah, it's back to your original point. It's a space that is constantly moving so quickly, and it's really getting to the point where the point of getting a ground up new renderer working used to be years of development, and now it's there's so much code and reference out there to do that in months time, and then innovating on top of that with all the people that are very experienced is continuously happening at a rapid pace. So for our our future, we need to make sure that we're agnostic as possible and connected as possible to all those different opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think MODO has a great built-in renderer that you get for free with MODO. But having access to ProRender or Octane or V-Ray, you mentioned Redshift, so things like that. If other rendering applications want to come to MODO, you're going to have a more robust API for them to work with. And the trend in rendering just really seems to be everything's getting faster, everything's getting easier. V-Ray, Chaos Group had a good show on V-Ray Next, and there's one about 3D Light and Katana integration that's also up there. Basically, the theme being streamline, ease of use, and speed. And so I think all this stuff is really going to be showing up in all these different renderers, and being able to connect to as many as possible from within MODO, so you can find one that fits your needs is the way to go. Somebody I saw in the chat had asked if V-Ray works with MODO 12. I just tested that while we're talking here, and appears to. So
yeah, I don't know if they've officially announced that or anything like that yet, but they usually hold back until they don't do their final testing until it's officially out there. And it's been a couple of weeks or so since we released it. So if it's not already announced, it's probably coming very soon.
Yeah, I should get but talking to Chaos Group, we'll have them over here on Pixel Fondue in a live stream hopefully within a week or two. Let me just actually move on to a couple of the new kits and things that have come out for MODO recently, and we could chat about that really quickly here as we're running up against an hour. I'm just going to share my screen again really quickly, if I can do that quickly.
There's been just tons of stuff around the procedural modeling, which is really exciting to see. We're investing a lot more into that as well. There's a lot of procedural modeling mesh ops and things coming. There's a bunch of stuff in 12.0. There's a bunch more coming in 12.1. Almost at least a half a dozen or so in 12.1. And 12.1 actually should be released in a public beta mode tomorrow or Friday, right, Andy? We're within days away of that being out there too.
12.1 already coming out in public beta mode. So if you're a subscriber, you can check out 12.1. There's new mesh ops. This one I have full screen right now is by, it looks like Fruebird. I think it's supposed to be Freebird, right? That's his handle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sean Free.
Sean. So, and
this
I know.
Is really, really cool because this gets us even closer to kind of the Grasshopper type of a procedural modeling system. It's a lot more math driven.
Right. So in Grasshopper, you're talking about is that a Rhino plugin or a?
Yeah.
Rhino. Okay. So it's something a lot of people bring up in terms of a cool procedural paradigm. So this is Sean. I know Sean has been working on a number of things for a while, and this is coming out. It's a Python mesh op. You just add the mesh op like you would any other mesh op. It looks like it has an entire Python window, like editing window built in, right?
Yeah, you have to be pretty serious, I think, to use it.
Yeah, but what the cool thing is, I mean, I look at this and I think, okay, I don't know how to use Python, but I know Sean has said that people who create mesh ops here, basically Python code that can operate on geometry or whatever in MODO, can just export that as an LXP file, or LPK file, correct?
What are the assembly files for procedural? I don't remember that acronym. What's the acronym, Andy?
That's LPK, I think.
LPK?
LPK, I think. Yeah, which you can just drag and drop into MODO, right, Andy?
Yeah.
So some of the Python nerds out there who want to get their hands on this and do some cool stuff, I expect to see some cool presets coming out with this particular one. There's also, Mario Baldi, who I need to get on here, has done just a ton of cool stuff. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, some of the stuff that Mario is doing is what we had hoped for. Is people leverage this technology to create. He's done it more in a compiled plugin way, but they're, for all intents and purposes, they are kind of assemblies and assembly presets that, for the rest of us, mere mortals, we can easily, drop in there and take advantage of all this stuff.
Yeah, this one is called Edge Flow. He's got another one called Shrink Wrap, which I actually used recently on a project. That one I think is free. I also own his Particle one and some of the other ones he has. So he's really cranking a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah.
We'll put his. If you go to Pixel Fondue, we try to stay on top of things here and put things out. So here we have instant lighting kit from Richard Yacht and some of Richard's new Uber Ball. We've got like the Shrink Wrap thing from Mario. New channel chimp came out recently with new controls. I think it'll handle some of the VR hardware now. Is that correct? Ed?
I think it works with the trackers now. The Vive trackers, I think.
Right. Right.
Cool.
Yeah, we've got Geo. We got just a bunch of stuff. William Vaughn does a good job of getting some stuff up here. Vizpack, more stuff from Richard Yacht. Shmirkov, Alexander Shmirkov. We got to talk about this guy. So
yeah, this is cool stuff.
Yeah, where did he come from?
Where did this guy come from?
Could we clone him?
Yeah, he's got a Gumroad page, which I have up here. He also has a YouTube channel. He's got a bunch of scenes here. I think he's just using vanilla MODO for a lot of this stuff, but he does some of the coolest procedural stuff I've seen in MODO. And he's got some stuff here for just a couple of bucks on Gumroad. We'll put his link up there. You need to, as a community, we need to support guys like this who push the envelope of MODO and release cool stuff to the community. And just, I've just never seen. I've never seen some of this stuff done before. Here I think he's using Dynamics maybe to make a pillow. Was that what that one was?
The knit one is really cool.
Yeah, the face.
Oh yeah, this one is crazy. Yeah, I think there's a YouTube one, but it's this sort of procedural yarny.
I think I posted a link to that to everyone I know.
Yeah, that was just a really cool one. So he's got a lot of cool stuff.
And the way Alexander explains it in his video, it's all visual, but the way he sets up his MODO UI so that it's really clear what he's doing. I mean, he just explains everything that he's doing to get that result, and it's phenomenal. Right. So I would take a look at some of his stuff. If you're looking around do some stuff in MODO, I would look at William Vaughn has released a Pushing Points topology workbook. This is really application agnostic, but it's super thorough and detailed. He's released a bunch of updates for it already. William, of course, go ahead. I'm pretty
sure there's at least 3 William Vaughns in this world. There's no way he's doing all this.
Honestly, that guy doesn't sleep because he also wrote a book. Second gen.
Well, really quickly, getting back to his topology workbook, William allowed me to kind of proofread it, like have early access to it. And I think over the course of like 4 or 5 days, I learned more in those 5 days than I did like my whole time in any modeling class, like in college. I wish I had that book my first year in college. It's amazing.
And it's not specific to MODO, really. It's just pushing polygons in general, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I mean, he uses MODO throughout it, but he's really exploring the concepts of sub-D modeling.
Right, and you're taking somebody with 20 some years of knowledge and compressing it into a book. Like this is pretty important stuff. It's probably a must-have for people who want to do this as a career, even if you've been doing this as a career for years. You never stop learning in this industry. And so, William has been going crazy. I don't know how he finds the time. He wrote a book. Like my daughter bought his book on Amazon. My daughter's 13. She read it in one day. She's a bit of a connoisseur, so I think she seemed to like it. And said had some interesting twists. Said it was a little dark. Paraphrasing her, haven't read it. William's probably like, what do you mean dark? I don't know. Maybe, yeah, it was dark. I have no idea if it's dark or not. My daughter thought it had some twists that got a little dark. I don't know. But I did ask William if it was appropriate for a 13-year-old, and he said, you know what, every parent's different, but take a look. She seemed to like that. And what am I missing? There's been some other stuff going on. I know we have lots of stuff here.
Gideon just reminded me. Frederick Vidman is he's been kind of giving some kind of sneak peeks of his tropism plugin for MODO, which is really interesting.
Oh, right. So that I've seen some of those. So he's got a cool plugin that essentially allows you to grow curves and geometry towards points like a phototropism and like botany or something like that. Looked really cool. Using mesh operations, and I know Mario maybe teased something new and animation related, like a. I don't know if I want to give anything away. I think I could say it. I think it was like a Delta mesh op he was messing around with. So lots of stuff. I mean, there's just a flurry of stuff, and I think the community is getting pretty vibrant again. And I did want to say, like, MODO Indie is available now, and you do have some of these kits available on Indie. So how are you whitelisting, Shane? How are you doing this?
Yeah, so it's a protected environment with the Steam DRM. And we have to do a couple different things to technically get it to work, but we're starting to explore that. I think they're in my inbox ready to go. I just gotta shoot an agreement over to William and get that finalized, and we'll get those out there very shortly. And we, right now it's his 2 kits. I've talked to Lukasz about doing ACS possibly as well, and we'll continue to explore other ones, but we're just kind of plucking them off.
So ACS, Advanced Character Suite or Studio,
yep.
I use that. That's actually a must-have, in my opinion, if you use MODO for any sort of human-related thing. Even if you're just like an ArchViz person, you need to like pose some people, right? ACS it's awesome for that. And Lukasz is very talented artist and coder. I think did he work on Kanova a little bit, or is he just doing some? So he did work on that a little bit.
Yeah, we brought him in for UI and UX design stuff on Kanova too for a little bit.
Yeah, I always liked his UI for Advanced Character Studio. So that's a definite go-to. Cristobal Villa, actually, Andy, if you're looking for some new icons, why don't you get him on board? That guy's icons are awesome.
We're always looking for icons.
Yeah, we might have a really good opportunity for somebody out there to do either some contract work or potentially a full-time gig on that. I'm working on that going into the end of the year next year, this year and into next year.
Yeah, Cristobal has, I'm sure most MODO users use his plugins or his basically kit accumulations to some degree. So but if you go over to Cristobal's homepage, and he creates great icons and great tooltips. So you always know what his stuff. So I'm just throwing him out there because I know a lot of people always throw his name out whenever we're doing some sort of UI thing. For all I know, Cristobal's like, I don't do that work. Shut up. maybe he hates icons.
Are you suggesting we need better tooltips?
What's that?
Are you suggesting we need better tooltips?
Better tooltips would be nice. Yes, tooltips are.
Okay, I'll write that down.
Tooltips in general are great. But yeah, so I think we get some better tooltips. Maybe there's like some sort of way to wiki that, or I have no idea. All right, so I think we're getting near the end here. I'm looking. Any questions from the people in chat before we head out?
I know, not to drop the bomb at the end of all this, but we haven't even mentioned animation yet, and animation actually is of pretty big focus this year for the 12 series. So when we do release 12.1, we'll have a lot of improvements around what are the actors. And you want to talk to that at all, Andy? Just very quickly, some of the things coming this week on 12.1 beta.
Oh yeah, so Mark, I think that those of you who have been with MODO for a long time will know Mark Brown, very talented artist and long-time MODO developer. So he's been working hard over the last few months on a number of animation improvements. We have driven actions coming in 12.1, where you can actually take action animation and keyframe it as a single channel, and retime it and warp it very easily in the timeline. Just allows you to, and you can also rig it as well.
So actions, if you're not familiar with MODO animation, an action is essentially an item can have a chunk of animation operating in its own layer called an action.
Yeah.
And it's sort of...
it's separate from the timeline, or separate from the scene timeline.
Separate from the scene, and this is always, I've always seen this as some sort of building block towards larger animation capabilities. And yes, I did notice that Mark was back developing animation for MODO, and he, like, nobody knows animation better in MODO better than Mark. He's been a key developer in animation for years, and seeing something like driven actions sounds like a big deal. So being able to control
there's lots of
animations,
other stuff as well. But I mean, it's a like you said, driven actions is the first step to something.
Yeah, it's a pretty big building block. I mean, you'll see it. I mean, it's going to be a little frustrating. Like, oh my God, you're so close to NLA. Why didn't you just kind of do the rest of that? But it's a big building block, and it took a lot of effort. There's a lot more stuff coming in 12.2 to hang the carrot out there a little bit more. There's a lot. So
you're saying 12.1 is like imminent, like
it's
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So you can,
yeah.
So wait, beta tomorrow or public beta? Then?
Public beta. Yeah.
Right. So if you're a MODO subscriber or whatever, you can take a look at driven actions tomorrow.
Yes.
Yep.
Tomorrow or Friday. I don't know.
And other things.
So out of curiosity, because I just don't know, like if somebody does something cool with driven actions or wants to show how they work, can they make that public, or is all that hidden away in an NDA?
No, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. So we got driven actions coming, among other things. So that's I like we talked to this at the front, like this quicker cadence of stuff. Like 12 just came out, 12.1 in beta tomorrow with new stuff. I think that's pretty awesome. I actually really like this new way of doing things. And
we have 12.2 planned, and I'm currently thinking about 13. So we're kind of like we're 6 months ahead.
Out there touring the world, working on 13.1 right now.
Talking about 13 already. All right, lucky number. So there's a ton of comments coming up. I assume, as usual, you're always working on performance improvements for playback, weight painting.
For the first time in the longest time, I didn't make it a bullet point thing on the feature list, and everybody's like, "Oh, there's no performance, so I'm not upgrading." Well, there's kind of always performance, occurring and improvements in that area in general. It happens in all different areas of the application. Some of the bigger areas in the 12.0 release were more, just general workflow performance, like how quickly you get from A to B in a process. So Andy did a lot of, UI and workflow improvements that are, improve the performance side of things. But there's also, there's lots of different things that improve performance of either file I/O or general viewport performance. There's a lot of advanced viewport stuff coming in 12.1 that makes it significantly or just perceptually a lot faster.
So we'll see that in the beta tomorrow?
Yeah, you should see that in the beta shortly. There's just a lot of stuff. One big one that we're constantly working on is obviously animation and improving, the performance around animation in a lot of different areas. I don't think our job as developers will ever be complete when I don't think we'll ever be a day we're not looking at performance from a development standpoint.
Nice. So we'll get performance increases. Somebody mentions the Unreal Live Link, and I know Shani had mentioned in the past potentially having a Unity or Maya Live Link. Is this something you're still sort of actively looking at?
Yeah, we are. It was kind of slated for 12.1, but it's pushed out a little bit more. So we're still working on that. So look for that later in the year, hopefully. The GLTF stuff kind of bumped that back a little bit in the timeline.
The Unity Live Link or a Maya Live Link?
Looking at Unity right now.
Unity first, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody just asked fluids and 3D Tracker. I'm not even going to ask them that. They're not working on fluids and 3D Tracker. Nuke has a 3D Tracker. So
we're seeing... Well, I do want to say that we're seeing a bunch of really good job opportunities out there for MODO artists. We know Nike, for example, is hiring a bunch of people. I think William is at New Balance as well, always looking for people. But we're seeing this pop up all over the place. I've seen this from Porsche in Japan and other places as well. And not just artists, but there's definitely a need for, scripters, developers, people that can come in and, step in and customize Modo in these environments is very much of a need. So reach out to us if you're on the market and you think you have the skills. We can definitely help connect the dots for you. And then we're looking for more so a mid-level or junior developer for rendering also right now currently.
So you guys are actively looking for a rendering developer.
Yeah.
Okay, you heard that. Get your resumes out. In fact, you'll probably work to some degree with Alan Hastings, I'm guessing, who's one of the legends in the industry. I mean, he's one of the first guys to write a publicly available renderer. Being able to just kind of be in the same room as a guy who's been writing renderers since, I'm guessing, the early 90s is probably worth your while as a young. What's that?
That's a key part of this, is somebody to team up with Alan, work more closely with him, and help him and understand that code a lot more.
Yeah, I'm thinking being able to have Alan Hastings drop some rendering knowledge on you is probably pretty appealing for somebody looking to get into this industry.
Yeah.
You mentioned jobs. Yeah, I do see a number of Modo opportunities opening up. And didn't Lauren at Pixel Fondue just to start working at
we just ran into her last week. Yeah, so she's doing some training stuff out there at Nike, and lots of opportunities for training all over the place out there right now. So lots of good things happening with Modo in the industry in general.
Nice. And Ed, are you part of your job as evangelist, sort of keeping everybody attuned to what's going on with that type of stuff and developments in that area?
Oh, sure. As far as what jobs are available for Modo?
Just sort of job opportunities that pop up. Do people ever actually contact you and say, hey, look, I'm a whatever Modo artist with 10 years experience. My game company just closed. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. No, I do get that every so often. If anything comes up, I usually post it in the Slack group. We have a job posting section, a channel for job posting.
And the Slack group has a job posting section.
Yeah, our official Foundry Modo Slack group, yeah.
So we should put that link up to the Slack group at the live stream. I think we normally do that. But yeah, Slack group is actually quite active. And it used to be where I knew everybody in the Slack group. I just kind of knew all the names. I hardly know anybody there anymore. Either everybody changed their name or there's a lot of new Modo users. I don't know. I don't know. Training for Modo somewhere, Sunny is asking. Well, Pixel Fondue has lots of training. I believe we've got, I think we're nearing 1 million views. In fact, let me take a peek. Maybe
that's awesome.
Wow.
Maybe we've hit 1 million. I don't know if I could take a look real quick. Analytics has Pixel Fondue hit 1 million views. We are at, where is it? I don't know. I thought we were close. I'll post it somewhere. I'll find it. That's the last 28 days. Anyway, we've got a lot. And I think that's about it. Like I said, I'm trying to get Chaos Group on here. I've got some other interviews I want to do. I'd like to get Mario Baldi, some of the kit producers on here. Maybe Paul Kinane from Octane. Paul, if you watch these, talking about you, get you on here. Anybody else, let's send something to Pixel Fondue. Just go to the little comment thing there, and we'll try to get some more people on here. Oh, Substance live link. I know that Emmanuel has been updating that. So Substance, it seems like everybody and their brother uses Substance nowadays, but there's a live link between Substance and Modo that Emmanuel created. And I know he's done a number of these live linking sort of asset browsing type programs. And I think that's about it. 12.1 dropping tomorrow for good, for sure. We good with that?
I can't say for sure. Michael kill me. It's supposed to be, but I haven't talked to Mike today yet. So
Mike Jensen, I think I saw him in the chat somewhere. Come on,
he ran and hid from me the rest of the day now. But
the imminent release of 12.1. Okay.
Hey, real quick, we should mention the contest, the second gen contest for William's book. We didn't mention that, right? We're having basically a 2-month contest on our forums. It should be in the Modo section.
Oh, nice. Okay. Oh, right there. Second gen competition. Yeah, it's on the Pixel Fondue side as well. There's I think I was there on that page earlier. So
okay, great.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. So I think that was a good conversation. Happy to see 12.1 is out. Happy to see Kanova out. Excited about that. 12.1. Everything's happening very quickly. Tons of new stuff. all you Python guys, check out Sean's Python Mesh Op Operator. I want to see some cool Python stuff. And if you've been watching William Vaughan videos once a day for the last 365 days, maybe go buy his book or his topology book as a way of, even if you don't read it, the guy's earned it. So, check out that. So, all right. So you guys have a good week. I know my clients have been calling me for the last half hour, so I got to go.
Yes. I got to go pick up my kids. Thanks.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye, Greg.
Bye.
Go to bed, Andy.
Bye.